This is HFY Vanguard, where one human's compassion breaks chains and one alien's soul rewrites destiny. The legend begins now. The corridors of Xenogenesis Corporation's deep space research facility were colder than a grave. Frost webbed across the reinforced glass panels, and each of Trevor Hale's breaths came out as a mist that hung in the air before dissolving into the sterile blue light. The hum of life support systems echoed down the metal hallways, an endless mechanical heartbeat devoid of warmth or mercy. He adjusted his thermal jacket, the black fabric pulling tight across his muscular frame as he cursed under his breath. Routine inspection, my ass. His voice died, instantly swallowed by the sound-dampening walls. It was Sunday, his only rest day, and yet he'd been summoned by an automated maintenance alert to a wing he'd never serviced before Sector 12B. No record of it existed in the facility schematics. That was already wrong. Trevor tapped on his wrist tablet, scrolling through the maintenance logs. The screen flickered just once before stabilizing. Then a single message appeared in bold red text. "Help me, sentient entity detected Lab 12B. He froze. The words pulsed once, then vanished as if they'd never existed. He blinked, uncertain whether the message was real or a glitch in the system. But the cold creeping down his spine told him otherwise. "Okay, that's new," he muttered, forcing a shaky laugh that echoed too loudly in the empty corridor. For 3 years, Trevor had worked for Xenogenesis, designing and maintaining life support systems meant to sustain colonists on distant worlds. The pay was obscene, the benefits even better. But everyone knew the costs don't ask questions. Still, the curiosity that had once driven him to explore the stars hadn't died completely. Somewhere deep in his chest, under layers of cynicism and corporate obedience, a spark still flickered. And now that spark was whispering, "Go see." The hallway narrowed as he advanced, lights dimming automatically in his wake. The deeper he went, the more the facility changed. Here the walls weren't the sterile white of standard corridors. They were matte gray with faint blue veins running like circuitry beneath the surface. There were no labels, no exit signs, no indication of purpose. The silence pressed against him like a living thing. At the corridor's end stood a biometric door with a circular scanner. The panel glowed faintly, its edges rimed with frost. Above it, faintly etched words barely visible through the ice read, "Restricted Biogenesis Chamber." Trevor frowned. Biogenesis, that wasn't one of the divisions he serviced. Still, his engineer's instincts kicked in. He pressed his gloved palm against the scanner. A sharp beep cut through the air, and then impossibly the light turned green. The door hissed open. He stepped back instinctively. "That shouldn't, my clearance doesn't..." But the thought trailed off. Beyond the threshold, a faint glow bled from within, rhythmic and alive, like the slow breathing of something enormous. Trevor's heart drummed against his ribs as he stepped inside. The chamber was circular, easily 50 meters wide, lined with observation platforms and dormant terminals. In the center stood a cylindrical containment pod rising from floor to ceiling. Frost clouded its transparent shell, obscuring the figure inside. Every sensor in the room hummed softly: temperature, oxygen, neural activity. The equipment wasn't just advanced, it was classified. Trevor could tell by the absence of any manufacturer labels, all replaced by blank white plates. He approached cautiously, wiping a patch of frost away with his sleeve. And then he saw her. Inside the pod stood a woman, or something close enough to one to make the difference irrelevant. Her skin glowed faintly from within, a deep molten red, like smoldering embers hidden beneath the surface. White hair, luminous and weightless, floated slightly around her head, reacting to invisible air currents. She wore a torn gray bodysuit that barely clung to her figure, its fabric marred by burn marks and restraints wrapped tight around her wrists and forearms. Trevor's breath caught. She was beautiful. Alien, yes, but beautiful in a way that felt almost wrong, to witness the kind of beauty that didn't belong in a cage. Then her eyes opened, 2 brilliant orbs of blue fire locking directly onto him. Trevor staggered backward, his tablet slipping from his hand. He felt something, not sound, not words, but presence. A whisper threading straight into his mind, cool and clear as water. "Open the door, human. Free me." Trevor gasped, stumbling into the console behind him. The voice wasn't external, it was inside him. He looked at her. She hadn't moved yet, her gaze cut through him like light through glass. "Please, they hurt me every day." A single tear slid down her crimson cheek, glowing faintly as it fell. Trevor's throat went dry. His instincts screamed to report this, to turn around and leave. This was way beyond his pay grade, but beneath the fear another feeling stirred: anger. He hadn't joined xenogenesis to torture sentient beings. He had joined to build life. And whatever this was, it wasn't life, it was suffering. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to steady. Who? Who are you? The answer slid into his thoughts like silk. Leah, my name is Leah. They keep me here because of what I am, because of what's in my blood. Trevor stared at the containment pod, at the faint scars on her skin, the burns around her restraints. He felt nausea twist in his gut. What did they do to you? She didn't speak this time. Instead, his mind filled with images. Needles piercing flesh that glowed red hot. White-coated scientists scribbling notes while screams echoed. Vials of blood labeled Specimen 47B. He jerked back, almost dropping to his knees. Jesus! His training said, report this, seal the chamber, leave. His conscience said, open the door. Then her voice again, weaker, trembling. They come soon. Please help me. I can't endure much more. Trevor stared at the control panel. His clearance shouldn't have worked. None of this made sense. But her eyes, those blue eyes filled with both pain and unyielding awareness, burned into him. He made his choice. My name's Trevor, he said softly, fingers flying over the console. And I hope to hell I'm not making the biggest mistake of my life. The containment field hummed. Warning lights flared yellow, then green. A low thud vibrated through the floor as the energy shield collapsed. Steam hissed from the base of the pod. The glass split open, rising slowly into the ceiling. The air shimmered around her as Leah took her first trembling step out of captivity. Her knees buckled. Trevor caught her instinctively. Her skin was fever hot, pulsing with a warmth that seeped into his gloves. You're burning up, he muttered. You freed me, she whispered aloud, for the first time, her voice raw but melodic. You have no idea what you've just done. Before Trevor could answer, the sirens began. Alert, security breach in Sector 12B. Lockdown initiated. Red light bathed the chamber. Footsteps thundered in the distance. Trevor's pulse surged. Leah's hand gripped his arm, impossibly strong despite her weakness. They'll come. You must trust me. He looked into her eyes, saw not fear but resolve, and nodded. Then lead the way. Together they ran into the freezing corridors, into the heart of danger, into the story that would shake the stars. The sirens howled like mechanical wolves. Red lights flashed through the corridors, turning the sterile metal walls into streaks of blood and panic. Trevor's boots pounded against the floor, the echo chasing him as he half-carried, half-guided Leah through the labyrinthine halls of Sector 12B. She stumbled, once her body weak from years of confinement, but her grip on his arm was iron. Left, she gasped, her voice trembling, but certain. There's a maintenance corridor ahead before the main lockdown seals it. He obeyed without hesitation. How she knew the layout of this restricted sector didn't matter. What mattered was surviving the next 5 minutes. They slipped through a narrow hatch as metal shutters slammed behind them with a hiss. The small passage beyond was lit only by flickering emergency lights, throwing their shadows across the curved walls. Trevor leaned against the cold metal, panting. You shouldn't be able to walk. What the hell did they do to you? Leah looked at him, her glowing blue eyes reflecting the emergency lights. They tested me, she whispered. Every day. They said I was the key to humanity's next evolution. They called it xenogenesis. Trevor swallowed hard. He had heard the word whispered before in classified meetings, rumors about genetic synthesis, about human-alien fusion projects. He dismissed them as corporate exaggerations. Now the evidence stood trembling in front of him, eyes full of agony and defiance. They harvested my kind, she continued, voice low and heavy. Our planet Virelia, it burned. They took what they wanted, and what they couldn't control, they destroyed. Her words hit him harder than the cold. Trevor looked away, guilt biting at him like frost. He had built systems that kept these labs alive. The air, the power, the life support. Unwittingly, he had sustained their cruelty. He forced himself to meet her gaze. I didn't know, I swear I didn't. Leah's expression softened just slightly. You do now. And you opened the door. Outside, the distant clatter of boots drew nearer. Security teams. Trevor straightened, pushing away the guilt. We need to move. Fast. She nodded, her white hair falling over her shoulders. When she spoke again, Her tone shifted, commanding, precise. "There's a maintenance shaft behind the coolant chamber. It connects to the east hangar." He frowned. "You shouldn't even know that exists." "I've been here longer than you think," she said simply. The words carried a chill of their own. They hurried down the narrow maintenance shaft, ducking under bundles of cables that glowed faintly blue. Steam hissed from vents above, and the air reeked of metal and antiseptic. Leah's steps were steady now, her breathing stronger. At one point, Trevor glanced at her arm and froze. The restraints that had bound her wrists were melting, literally disintegrating into ash as her skin emitted faint heat. She caught his stare. "The inhibitors were designed to suppress my energy. Without them?" She flexed her fingers, the air shimmering faintly. "I heal." "Your energy," he repeated. "You mean bioelectric?" "More than that." Her tone was almost sad. "My people could channel emotion into matter. Fear, joy, pain, they shape the world around us. That's why xenogenesis wanted us. They believed our DNA could turn human emotion into power." Trevor stared at her in disbelief, then at the scars around her wrists. "And they tortured you for it." She looked away. They needed to know if pain could fuel creation. The silence that followed was suffocating. They reached a junction where the shaft widened into a control platform overlooking the coolant reactor. Below them, massive pipes carried streams of liquid nitrogen glowing blue in the dark. Trevor checked the control pad beside the hatch. "This connects to the life support grid. I can reroute power, open a route to the east hangar, but we'll trip every sensor in the process." Leah nodded without hesitation. "Do it." He hesitated. "Once I do, there's no turning back." She stepped closer, the faint heat of her body radiating through his jacket. "You already crossed that line when you freed me." Trevor exhaled sharply. "Right." His fingers flew over the panel, rerouting power from life support grid, sector 12B to 8A, opening hangar access. The lights flickered, a low alarm pulsed. Then the intercom crackled to life, the voice of the facility AI echoing through the corridors. "Unauthorized activity detected. All security personnel converge on Sector 8A. Containment protocols engaged." Trevor grimaced. "They're coming." Leah placed her hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing." "Yeah," he glanced at her. "Tell that to the firing squad." For a moment, despite the chaos, she smiled, a small, almost human smile. "You're different from the others. You look at me like I'm a person, not a project." Something flickered in Trevor's chest. The sirens faded into background noise. He couldn't help but stare at her, at the way the red glow of her skin pulsed softly with her heartbeat. "You shouldn't smile like that," he said quietly. "It's dangerous." "For who?" she asked. He didn't answer. They moved again, descending toward the reactor platform. The roar of turbines drowned out the alarms. As they reached the final hatch, a sharp metallic clang echoed behind them. Trevor spun around. A trio of armed guards poured into the shaft, rifles raised. "Freeze step away from the asset," one barked. Leah's breath hitched. Trevor stepped in front of her. "Asset. She's not an—" "Shut up," the guard advanced. "You violated 17 corporate regulations, Hale. Turn her over and maybe you'll just get mind-wiped instead of spaced." Trevor's pulse thundered. Mind-wiped. The corporate euphemism for execution. He raised his hand slowly, but his mind was racing. Behind him, Leah whispered, "Trust me." Before he could ask what she meant, the air itself seemed to ripple. A pulse of invisible energy exploded outward from Leah's body. The guards staggered back, clutching their helmets. One screamed, dropping his weapon as his visor flickered with static. The other two froze, their eyes wide with terror, seeing something Trevor couldn't. He stared at her, stunned. "What the hell did you just do?" She swayed, her skin dimming. Emotion pulse, a reflex. They're seeing their own fear. Trevor blinked, adrenaline mixing with awe. "Remind me never to piss you off." He grabbed one of the fallen rifles and yanked the hatch open. "Let's go before they wake up." Leah followed, unsteady but smiling faintly. "You fight like a soldier." He laughed breathlessly. "No, I build air conditioners." "Then you're the bravest engineer I've ever met." They burst into the east hangar, a vast chamber lined with rows of ships suspended by magnetic clamps. The floor gleamed under crimson emergency lights. Trevor scanned the display panels. "Most of these are locked down. We need something small fast." Leah pointed toward the far wall. "That one? The Hermes-class courier." He looked at her, impressed. "You know ship?" "I know cages," she replied, "and how to break them." He couldn't help but grin. "Then let's break this one." They sprinted across the hangar as the distant rumble of approaching troops echoed behind them. Trevor accessed the ship's side panel, entering override codes with trembling hands. Come on, come on. The console blinked green, the ramp hissed open. Inside, the cockpit hummed to life. Trevor dropped into the pilot's seat, hands moving instinctively over the controls. Leah collapsed into the co-pilot chair, breathing hard. Strap in, he said. Are we free? Not yet. Engines roared. The hangar's magnetic clamps released with a shudder. As the courier ship rose from the floor, the intercom crackled once more. Security lockdown complete. Sector 12B, hangar doors sealed. Trevor gritted his teeth. Like hell they are. He slammed his hand onto the emergency override. The ship's plasma cannons fired, blasting the hangar doors into molten shards. Through the smoke, the icy blue of the planet's sky beckoned. Hold on. They shot forward through the breach and into the blinding light. For one fleeting moment, as the alarms faded into silence and the stars opened before them, Leah looked out the viewport, eyes wide in awe. I've never seen the sky before, she whispered. Trevor smiled, still gripping the controls. Then let's make sure you get to see a lot more of it. And behind them, Xenogenesis began to howl. The stars were sharp and cold outside the cockpit, glittering like a million distant eyes. Trevor's hands were still shaking as he adjusted the ship's throttle, the Hermes cutting through the upper atmosphere in a trail of ionized smoke. The hull groaned under the strain. The small courier wasn't meant for rapid launch under combat lockdown, but it held together barely. Behind them, the Xenogenesis facility shrank into a blot of steel and snow on the planet's surface. Sirens still echoed in the radio static, shrill and distant. Inside the cockpit, the silence felt like a living thing. Leah sat in the co-pilot seat, her white hair glowing faintly in the blue light of the controls. She stared out the viewport, her crimson fingers trembling as they rested on her lap. Trevor risked a glance at her. You all right? She nodded, though her eyes told another story. I've dreamed of this, the sky, the light, for so long. I didn't think it would hurt this much to see it. Trevor frowned. Hurt. The light, she murmured, touching the glass. It's beautiful, but my kind see more than photons. We see memory, and this light, it remembers what was taken from us. He didn't fully understand, but the emotion in her voice was raw, unfiltered. It twisted something deep inside him. Guilt, awe, something dangerously close to longing. He forced his eyes back to the instruments. We need to clear orbit before the satellites lock on. Will they follow? Oh yeah, Xenogenesis doesn't let its property walk away. The word property made her flinch. Trevor noticed immediately. Sorry, he said, quickly. You're not. She interrupted, voice quiet but steady. I was to them, a numbered specimen, but not to you. That simple sentence landed harder than any gunfire. He nodded once, throat tight. A proximity alarm suddenly wailed. Red light flooded the cabin. Trevor cursed. Incoming contacts multiple. The radar screen lit up with 5 red blips closing fast. Their transponders flashed the corporate insignia of Xenogenesis Tactical Retrieval Division. They found us already. Leah leaned forward, blue eyes narrowing. Vexers. He looked at her. You know what they are? Her lips tightened. I was bred beside them. The words made his stomach turn. They're prototypes. She explained, her tone flat with old pain. Synthetic hunters made from the same DNA they took from my people, shaped into weapons instead of beings. They track emotion, not heat or sound. Fear is their scent. Trevor swallowed hard. Then we give them something else to smell. He slammed a button on the console, diverting power from weapons to the engines. The Hermes roared forward, the acceleration pinning them to their seats. Outside, the curve of the planet began to fade into black space. Behind them, streaks of light flashed as the Vexer's pursuit crafts cut through the upper atmosphere, sleek dark serpentine. Trevor adjusted their vector, pushing the throttle past safety limits. The ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flared across the dashboard. Leah braced herself, gripping the edge of her seat. You're breaking the engine. Better that than letting them catch us, he shouted over the roar. One of the Vexer ships fired a pulse of blue plasma, slicing past their wing, close enough to melt the outer plating. The shockwave rocked the Hermes. Alarm screamed. Trevor fought the controls, teeth clenched. Hang on. They dove into the planet's thin cloud layer, using the turbulence to scramble tracking sensors. The hull rattled like it was being hammered by gods. Another blast seared past them, missing by inches. Leah's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Let me help. He didn't have time to argue. How? Oh, just don't be afraid. Before he could respond, she closed her eyes. The air inside the cockpit thickened, vibrating with an energy that prickled across his skin. The lights dimmed, not from power loss, but from something else. He felt it like the air itself was reacting to her pulse. Then the ship vanished. At least that's how it looked on the radar, their signature gone erased like a whisper lost in a storm. The Vexor ships overshot them, scanning wildly for a target that wasn't there. Trevor's jaw dropped. What did you just do? Leah opened her eyes, breathing hard, bent the spectrum, masked our presence by blending emotion frequencies with the engine's output. It won't last long. Trevor blinked at her, speechless. You just emotionally cloaked us? She managed a weak smile. You sound impressed. I'm terrified, he admitted, but yeah, impressed. She laughed softly, the first genuine laugh he'd heard from her, and something inside him unclenched. But the reprieve was brief. The ship trembled again as the cloaking field began to fade. They're adapting, Leah warned. Their minds are linked. They'll feel where I was. Trevor cursed under his breath. Then we make sure they can't follow. He flipped open the weapons console. The Hermes wasn't built for combat, but it had 2 plasma cannons and a decoy drone. Hold on, he said again, voice steady now, focused. The ship banked hard, turning back toward the oncoming Vexors. Leah's eyes widened. You're heading straight at them. Yeah, they won't expect that. The first Vexor craft fired again, a beam of energy slicing through the void. Trevor rolled the shot, missing by a hair. Then he fired both cannons simultaneously. Twin lances of plasma streaked forward, slamming into the Vexor's nose. The enemy craft detonated in a burst of white-blue fire. The shockwave shook their small ship. Trevor grinned grimly. 1 down. 4 to go. The Vexors split formation surrounding the Hermes. They moved with eerie coordination, their movements too precise to be human. Leah reached toward the viewport, her crimson fingers splayed. They share one mind. I can feel it. Her body tensed. Trevor turned to her. Leah, she gasped, clutching her temples. They're inside. They're trying to. He reached across the cockpit, grabbing her shoulders. Fight it. Stay with me. Her eyes flared bright blue, glowing like twin stars. For an instant, the cockpit was flooded with searing light. The nearest Vexor ship suddenly veered off course, spinning uncontrollably before crashing into another. The explosion illuminated her face, sweat, tears, raw defiance. Trevor stared at her, awed. You just killed them. Her breathing was ragged. No, I freed them. They were fragments of my kind trapped in synthetic shells. I released them. There was no triumph in her voice, only sorrow. The remaining 2 Vexor ships closed in fast, their weapons charging. Trevor's sensors screamed, we're hit if we stay here. Leah steadied herself, her eyes still glowing faintly. Then we run. He nodded and yanked the throttle forward. The Hermes leapt ahead, engines flaring white hot. The 2 Vexors pursued, weaving through debris fields and ion trails. Trevor's hands moved instinctively over the controls. We've got maybe 30 seconds of full burn before the engine blows. Then make them count, she said. He grinned despite the chaos. You're starting to sound like me. Or maybe you're starting to sound like me. They dove into the shadow of a massive derelict satellite, one of the old orbital defense platforms from centuries ago. Its skeletal remains drifted silently in space, forgotten and dead. Trevor angled the ship close, using the wreck's magnetic field to hide their trace. The Vexors, relentless, followed right into the trap. Now, Leah whispered. Trevor fired the drone, a decoy rigged with plasma fuel. The Vexors locked onto it instantly, mistaking it for their ship. When they were close enough, he triggered detonation. The resulting blast was blinding, a sphere of blue-white fire that lit up the void. The Hermes shuddered under the impact wave. Trevor shielded his eyes. When the light faded, nothing remained on the radar but debris. He exhaled slowly, leaning back in his seat. Tell me that was the last of them. Leah closed her eyes, sensing the void. Then she nodded. For now. For the first time since their escape, silence filled the cockpit, not the sterile kind from the facility, but something fragile, human. Trevor looked at her. You okay? I will be, she said softly. Thank you. He smiled faintly. Don't thank me yet. We're still fugitives, and this ship's reactor's one sneeze away from meltdown. Then we find somewhere to land. He checked the nav map. There's a station on the outer rim, off-grid, unofficial. They call it Nexus. Leah turned her gaze to him, curious. Is it safe? He gave a half smile. Safe is a relative term, but if you're trying to disappear, it's the next best thing to dying. She leaned back, her white hair glowing softly in the dim cockpit light. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Leah whispered, "When I reached into your mind earlier, I felt something. You weren't afraid of me." Trevor hesitated. "Should I be?" Her lips curved slightly. "Maybe. My people once said that fear is the first step toward understanding." He chuckled quietly. "Then I think I'm skipping steps." Her laughter, soft, melodic, filled the small cabin, and for the first time since this nightmare began, the sound didn't echo off metal. It lived real and warm between them. Outside, the void stretched endlessly ahead, cold, dangerous, vast. Inside the Hermes, two fugitives, one human, one alien, raced toward a haven that might not exist. But for the first time, both of them believed that maybe, just maybe, freedom wasn't a myth. The journey to Nexus Station took 12 sleepless hours. By the time the Hermes slipped out of warp, Trevor's muscles ached from exhaustion and his mind was fraying. The ship's AI announced arrival in a flat, emotionless tone that felt like mockery after all they'd survived. Before them drifted a moon fractured gray, half-eaten by mining scars. Orbiting it like a parasite was a patchwork ring of ships and scaffolds welded together. Nexus Station. To the untrained eye, it looked abandoned. To those who knew where to look, it was a thriving underworld of smugglers, deserters, scientists, and ghosts. Trevor exhaled. Home sweet nowhere. Beside him, Leah pressed her forehead against the glass. "So this is where humans go when they stop believing in their own system." "Yeah," he said quietly. "This is where we end up when we remember we still have a conscience." They hailed the station, transmitting a falsified ID string. Silence. Then a voice crackled through the comms, deep, rough mail. "Unidentified vessel, you're trespassing in restricted space. Identify or be vaporized." Trevor replied calmly, "Courier Hermes class carrying humanitarian cargo, and one exhausted engineer. Requesting safe harbor." A pause, then laughter, genuine if a little cruel. "Humanitarian cargo, haven't heard that one in a while. Docking Bay 4, don't try anything stupid." The channel went dead. Trevor glanced at Leah. "See, that's the warmest welcome we'll get." Leah tilted her head, studying his face. "And you're not afraid?" He smirked. "I'm too tired to be afraid." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk. The ramp lowered, revealing a hangar lit by flickering amber lights and half-functional drones. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and cheap liquor, alive, chaotic, real. Two figures approached. The first was a mountain of a man with a beard thick enough to hide small weapons in. The second was a small alien with 4 arms and iridescent skin that shimmered in every color of the spectrum. "Fresh meat," the bearded man said, grinning. "Name's Harker. This sparkle bug's Pix. We run intake for new arrivals." Trevor extended a hand. "Trevor Hale, engineer, she's—" Leah, the alien woman, said simply, stepping forward. Pix's iridescent eyes blinked rapidly. He said something in a melodic, clicking language. Harker translated with a low whistle. "Pix says you're a rare one. We don't see many red-skinned refugees who glow like a reactor core." Leah's voice stayed calm. "We're fugitives, from Xenogenesis." Harker's grin vanished. "You serious?" Trevor nodded, dead serious. "Then you'd better come with us. The council will want to meet you." They were escorted through dim tunnels, past traders and mercenaries, past alien children chasing drones through the corridors. Nexus wasn't a place, it was a patchwork miracle of desperation. A society built out of everything the galaxy had thrown away. Trevor felt eyes following them, wary, curious, hostile. News of Xenogenesis fugitives spread like plasma fire. When they entered the council chamber, Trevor froze. The room was circular walls lined with old monitors and holographic maps. 6 figures sat around a steel table, 3 human, 3 alien. And at the head, standing with arms crossed, was Rena Valen. Trevor's heart stuttered. She was older now. Her once jet-black hair streaked with gray, but the sharp intelligence in her eyes hadn't dulled. Rena, his old commander, his ex, the one who taught him that rules mattered more than feelings. "Well," she said flatly, "if it isn't Trevor Hale, the man who once told me he'd never break a protocol." Trevor forced a smile. "Guess I'm full of surprises." Her gaze slid to Leah. "And this must be your surprise project." Leah met her stare unflinchingly. "I'm not a project." The silence that followed was heavy. Then Rena turned away. "Sit down." They obeyed. The council asked questions rapid, sharp, distrustful. How they escaped what Laya was, whether they carried trackers or viruses. Trevor answered honestly except for the parts that would have gotten them both spaced. When they were done, Rena leaned forward. You understand what you've done. Trevor Xenogenesis doesn't just lose property. They erase it. They'll come here. Then help us stop them, he said simply. Help you, she echoed, laughing bitterly. You bring a bioweapon to my door and ask for help. She's not a weapon, Trevor snapped. Everyone turned to look at him. The outburst echoed in the metal room. Rena's expression didn't change. Then prove it. Without warning, she pressed a button on her wrist console. Panels in the floor shifted open. Energy restraints flared around Leah in a cage of blue light. Trevor lunged to stop it. Rena! Guards raised rifles. Leah didn't move. Her expression remained eerily calm. You think this will contain me? Rena folded her arms. If you're harmless, you'll stay still. The light brightened, humming with power. Leah winced as it touched her skin, faint smoke rising from the contact. Trevor took a step forward. You're hurting her. Rena didn't flinch. Good. If she's real, pain will prove it. Leah met her eyes through the shimmering barrier. You're afraid. Damn right I am, Rena replied. I've seen what Xenogenesis calls research, and I won't let you bring it here. Trevor's voice broke the tension. Rena, listen to me. I've worked for that company for years. They experiment on sentient beings. They kill them like lab rats. She's the only one left, the last of her kind. You think that's something to fear? That's something to protect. Something flickered across Rena's face, conflict, guilt, memory. She hesitated. Leah spoke softly. I can prove I'm not your enemy. The barrier hummed as she raised her hand, palm flat against the energy field. Her skin glowed brighter red, bleeding into gold, and suddenly the hum quieted. Everyone in the room felt it, a wave of warmth, subtle but undeniable. Memories surfaced, fleeting, impossible moments of comfort, of safety, of home. One of the alien counselors whispered, awestruck, She's projecting empathy. Rena's shoulders lowered slightly. You can do that to anyone. Leah nodded. Only if they let me. Rena stood in silence for a long moment, then deactivated the barrier. The energy field dissolved. Trevor rushed to Leah's side, steadying her as her knees buckled. She was exhausted, but her smile was faintly triumphant. Rena exhaled. All right, your guests not prisoners, for now. Trevor nodded, relief flooding him. Thank you. She held up a hand. Don't thank me yet. You're still a liability. Inhale, we'll talk later. Privately. Leah tilted her head. You were once close. Trevor sighed. Yeah, long story. Rena overheard her voice dry as old iron. Not long enough to forget. Later, Trevor and Leah were given a small room, a converted supervisor's suite, overlooking the main concourse. It wasn't much, but after weeks of steel and terror, it felt like a palace. Trevor collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. I hate politics. Leah sat beside him, her hair reflecting the dim light. You hate being reminded that humans can be cruel. He glanced at her. You're not wrong. She smiled faintly. But they can change. You did. He studied her face, luminous, calm, far too wise for someone who'd known only captivity. I just opened a door. Sometimes, she said softly, that's all it takes to start a war. Or end one. Their eyes met. The silence between them was warm now, not cold. Outside, Nexus pulsed with life, the hum of machines, alien laughter, the chaos of survival. Inside, for the first time since their escape, Trevor allowed himself to breathe. But deep in the station's shadows, unseen sensors flickered awake. A faint signal pulsed outward into the void, a transmission coded in Xenogenesis encryption. They weren't as hidden as they thought. 3 days had passed since their arrival at Nexus Station, and Trevor was already restless. He had spent most of that time in the engineering bay, buried in systems he barely understood. Nexus wasn't a single structure. It was a Frankenstein miracle of stolen freighters, old mining rigs, and patched life support units, strung together with hope and duct tape. It was ugly, noisy, and alive. He liked it. Leah, on the other hand, drew attention wherever she went. Her red skin and glowing eyes were impossible to hide, and word spread quickly through the station's lower levels. Rumors whispered that the Crimson Woman had escaped from a Xenogenesis lab, and that she carried the genetic key to immortality. Trevor tried to keep her in their quarters, but Leah was no one's prisoner anymore. She spent hours walking the concourse, observing humans and aliens alike, curious, quiet, always listening. The way the others looked at her, half awe, half fear, made Trevor's gut tighten. He'd seen that same look before in the labs of xenogenesis. It never ended well. When the summons came from the council, he wasn't surprised. The council chamber was busier this time. More faces around the table, tension thick enough to choke on. Harker leaned against the wall, arms crossed, while Rena stood at the head of the table. Trevor sat beside Leah. The others gave her a wide berth. Rena didn't waste time. We intercepted a coded broadcast from inside the station last night. Xenogenesis knows we're harboring fugitives. They're mobilizing. Murmurs rippled through the room. Trevor's stomach dropped. That signal someone here transmitted it. Exactly. Rena's eyes swept over the group, which means we've got a traitor. Silence. Then Leah's soft voice. How long before they arrive? Maybe 2 days, Rena said grimly. They won't risk a full assault. They'll send a precision strike team. Once they get what they came for, they'll sterilize the station, Trevor finished. The room fell quiet again. Leah's expression didn't change, but the air around her seemed to hum faintly. I'll go, she said suddenly. Rena frowned. Excuse me. I'll face them, Leah said, standing. You can't protect me, and they'll destroy you trying. I'll draw them away. Trevor stood too. The hell you will. Her eyes turned toward him, soft and luminous. You risked everything for me. I won't let you die because of it. You're not walking into their hands again, he snapped. We're ending this. Together. The argument died as the council door slid open and a tall, thin, insectoid figure entered Krell, the station's chief systems operator. Apologies for the delay, Krell said in his clicking, rasping voice. The outer sensor array required recalibration. Trevor frowned. Convenient timing. Krell's antennae twitched. Are you implying something human? Yeah, Trevor said coldly. That someone's been feeding coordinates to our old employers. Before Krell could respond, Pick scuttled forward, all 4 hands waving frantically. Wait, Krell's been here the whole time. I can vouch for... Rena raised a hand. Enough. We don't have proof yet. Trevor looked at Leah. Her expression was unreadable, but her blue eyes flicked toward Krell for just an instant, then away. That night, Trevor couldn't sleep. The hum of the station was constant air recyclers, distant chatter, metal creaks echoing through the walls. He sat by the window staring out at the fractured moon. Leah stood behind him silent. You don't trust them, she said finally. He shook his head. I don't trust anyone who survived this long, including myself. She walked closer. The faint heat from her skin brushed his neck. You still blame yourself. I helped build their labs, he said quietly. Every breath they took, every experiment they ran, I kept it running. I might as well have held the scalpel. Leah knelt beside him, her hand resting gently on his. Then stop running from it. Redeem it. Her warmth sank through his skin. He turned his head towards her, their faces inches apart. You make it sound easy. It isn't, she whispered. But I believe in you, Trevor Hale. He looked into her glowing blue eyes and for the first time in years believed he might be more than the sum of his mistakes. Then the explosion tore through the station. The shockwave shattered the window's force field for a split second, throwing Trevor and Leah backward. The alarms howled. Emergency lights flared red. Trevor jumped to his feet, pulling Leah up with him. They're here. The door to their quarters slid open. Rena, bruised and bleeding, stumbled inside. Sabotage, she gasped. Krell's compromised. He opened the docks. Where is he? Trevor demanded. Command deck transmitting coordinates. Trevor swore. Leah's eyes burned bright. Then we stop him. The corridors of Nexus were chaos. Smoke shouting panic. Security teams clashed with intruders in sleek black armor Xenogenesis commandos. Trevor led the way, plasma pistol in hand. Leah followed her movements, fluid, almost predatory. The air shimmered faintly around her, an aura of restrained energy. When they reached the command deck, Krell was already there. He stood before the central console claws, flying across the keys, transmitting data through a glowing uplink. Stop, Trevor shouted. Krell turned, mandibles clicking. It's too late, human. The corporation rewards loyalty and survival. Trevor fired. The blast hit Krell in the shoulder, spinning him around. But the insectoid only hissed, slamming a final command into the console. The lights flickered. Through the viewport, several dark shapes emerged from hyperspace Xenogenesis strike ships. Damn it! Trevor lunged forward, tackling Krell. They crashed to the floor. The alien slashed at him with a claw, cutting across his arm. Leah stepped forward, eyes glowing like fire. The air around her pulsed once, then Krell froze mid-motion, trembling. His compound eyes widened in terror. What are you? See, she whispered, what you've done. He screamed a horrible chittering sound, then collapsed, his body twitching. The console shorted out, sparks flying. Trevor stared at her, breathing hard. Leah. Her voice was low, broken. I didn't kill him. I just showed him every life his betrayal would have taken. He looked at the smoldering console, then at the viewport. The strike ships were already deploying drop pods. Rena's voice came over the comms, strained but steady. All units defensive grid online. We hold them off as long as we can. Trevor turned to Leah. We can't hold them. Not forever. No, she said, but we can end this. How? By giving them what they fear most. Her hand brushed the console, absorbing the last of its energy. The lights flickered again as the glow spread across her skin, brighter than ever before. Trevor's eyes widened. Leah, what are you doing? Xenogenesis made me a weapon, she said softly. It's time they learned what that means. Don't, he pleaded. You'll burn yourself out. She smiled faintly. Then I'll burn for something that matters. Before he could stop her, she stepped onto the observation deck. Outside, the first wave of strike pods slammed into the station hall. The air vibrated as Leah lifted her hands. A surge of light burst from her body, a wave of raw, living energy that rippled through the metal like lightning. The attacking pods halted mid-flight, their engines flickering, their pilots screaming through the comms. Then the light exploded outward, engulfing them. Trevor shielded his face as the viewport filled with white fire. The impact rocked the station systems, failing in cascades. When the glare faded, silence fell. The strike ships were gone, disintegrated, scattered into glittering dust across the void. Leah stood in the center of the deck, swaying, her glow dimmed, flickering like a dying flame. Trevor ran to her, catching her before she fell. Hey, he whispered, voice cracking. Hey, stay with me. You did it. She looked up at him, eyes dull but still burning faintly. Did we? He nodded. They're gone. A small, exhausted smile crossed her lips. Then maybe freedom is real. And she collapsed against him. Hours later, the fires were out. The damage was immense, but Nexus had survived. Rena limped into the infirmary where Trevor sat beside Leah's bed. The crimson woman lay still, her breathing shallow but steady. She saved us, Rena said quietly. Yeah, Trevor murmured. And she nearly killed herself doing it. Rena hesitated. Hale, I'm sorry for how I treated her, for doubting you. He looked up at her, weary but calm. You were doing your job. Now I'm doing mine. What job is that? He smiled faintly, finishing what she started. Outside the viewport, debris drifted across the void, remnants of Xenogenesis's fury, now nothing more than dust among the stars. But far beyond the horizon, in the cold dark where light takes years to die, something stirred. The corporation was not finished, and neither were they. 3 weeks after the attack, the void was quiet again. Too quiet. The Nexus station had survived, but barely. Hundreds dead systems, fractured morale in pieces. Yet somehow, amidst the smoking wreckage, something new was forming resolve. Leah's act of sacrifice had done more than save them. It had awakened something in everyone who witnessed it. For the first time, the station's outlaws and exiles believed they could fight back. And Trevor, once a reluctant engineer, had become the beating heart of that rebellion. He stood now in the station's hangar, staring at the sleek gray ship before him. The hull bore the scars of battle, but its new name glowed proudly across the side, the Vanguard. Rena approached, datapad in hand, her uniform stained and patched. You really think this thing can take on Xenogenesis? Trevor smirked. It doesn't have to. Just needs to get us in and out alive. And if you don't come back, he looked at her, eyes steady, then you blow the rest of their empire to hell without me. Rena sighed, shaking her head. You always were a terrible subordinate. Good thing I'm not one anymore. Her voice softened. She'd be proud, you know. Trevor's jaw tightened. She's still alive. He said it with a certainty that silenced her. Leah's recovery had been slow, her body ravaged by the energy she'd unleashed. But even unconscious, she was changing. The medtechs reported strange readings, her DNA rewriting itself, energy patterns, stabilizing, heart rate synced to some unknown rhythm. When she finally woke, her first words were simple. Where is Trevor? He was there before she finished asking. She looked at him, her once fiery red skin now softer, almost metallic in sheen, her glow dimmed but more controlled. Her voice was quieter, too steadier. You're leaving, she said. He hesitated. How do you? I can feel your intent. You mean to strike them back? He nodded slowly. We can't hide forever. They'll keep coming. So we take the fight to them, to their data core above Proxima 3. That's where they keep the genetic archives. It's where they ended your people. Her blue eyes darkened, grief mixing with fury. Then it's where I end them. Trevor frowned. You're not ready. Your body's still... I am ready, she interrupted, her tone sharper now. You think pain is new to me, Trevor? I was born in a cage. I can survive anything. He stared at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. Then let's finish what we started. The Vanguard cut through hyperspace like a blade through silk. Trevor sat at the helm, the hands steady on the controls, while Leah stood beside him, her pale hair drifting in the artificial gravity field like a halo of light. Coordinates locked, he said. Proxima 3 system, one jump. Do you ever stop being calm? She asked, watching the stars stretch and blur. He chuckled. No point in fear now. We already jumped off the cliff. Then let's make sure we fly before we hit the ground. Hyperspace folded around them, colors shifting into liquid geometry. Trevor had seen warp travel 1,000 times before, but this felt different, electric charged, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. When they dropped out, the view took his breath away. The Xenogenesis Data Citadel hung in orbit over Proxima 3 like a floating cathedral of glass and steel, massive, elegant, and monstrous. It was shaped like a blooming flower of metal, its central spire glowing with pale blue light, a monument to the company's arrogance. Leah's voice was barely a whisper. That's where I was born. Trevor's grip tightened on the throttle. Then let's make sure you're not the last. They approached under stealth. The ship's outer shell emitted no energy, no signature, a trick borrowed from Leah's unique frequency patterns. But they couldn't hide forever. As they neared the docking spire, alarms flared. Detected, Trevor muttered. Didn't think we'd waltz in unnoticed. Leah's eyes glowed faintly. Let me. Before he could stop her, she extended her hands. A pulse rippled through the cockpit screens, not digital, but emotional. The targeting systems of the Citadel flickered, confused by sensations they couldn't compute: empathy, sorrow, fear. Did you just make their sensors feel something? Trevor asked. Machines can't feel, she said softly, but the humans behind them can. I let them remember. Trevor shook his head, half in awe, half in disbelief. You're terrifying. Her lips curved. So are you. The docking clamps engaged with a dull thud. They were in. The corridors of the Citadel were pure corporate perfection. Polished steel, white lights. The faint hum of power running through walls like veins. Trevor moved first, weapon raised, Leah gliding silently behind him. Her presence was like heat in the sterile cold. They reached the central core, a circular chamber lined with transparent data columns. Inside each column floated vials of liquid light, genetic blueprints, billions of them. Leah stared in silence. Every species they ever touched. Trevor approached the central console, plugging in a data drive. Let's expose them all. But before he could start, a familiar voice echoed through the chamber. You should have stayed in your cage experiment. Director Vex stepped from the shadows, tall, blue-skinned, inlaid with cybernetic implants that pulsed faintly with light. His black eyes locked on Leah. You cost me half a division, girl. You and your human pet. Trevor aimed his weapon. You're not taking her again. Vex smiled thinly. You misunderstand, engineer. You've already brought her back to me. He tapped a control on his wrist. The floor beneath them shifted, energy rings igniting around the chamber. Leah gasped, staggering. The resonance field? He's using my genome to... Vex's smile widened. To complete it. You see, I wasn't sent to capture you, my dear. I was sent to merge with you. His skin shimmered, veins lighting up like circuits. His voice deepened, warped. You are the prototype. I am the perfection. Trevor fired once, twice, but the bolts dissolved mid-air, absorbed by the energy field. Trevor, Leah said through clenched teeth. The console destroyer. He ran to the panel, tearing open wires and slamming his fist into the core. Sparks flew. The field flickered, unstable. Vex roared, his body convulsing. The energy around him rippled like heat. Leah stepped forward, blood glowing beneath her skin. You think power makes you divine, but real power is compassion. She reached out and her light enveloped him. Vex screamed a sound that rattled glass and bone alike, then imploded into a storm of red and white fire. The chamber shook. Data columns shattered. Trevor grabbed Leah, pulling her toward the exit. We have to go now. The entire Citadel was collapsing, alarms shrieking, gravity shifting. They sprinted down the corridors as debris rained from above. Vanguard, respond, Trevor shouted into his comms. Rena's voice came through static. We've got you, Hale. Docking bay's gone. We'll grab you on the fly. Copy that. They burst through the airlock just as the Citadel's core exploded. The shockwave hit like a tidal wave. The Vanguard swooped in tractor beams locking onto their suits. As they were pulled aboard, the Citadel disintegrated behind them, a dying god collapsing into starlight. In the aftermath, Trevor sat in the Vanguard's cockpit watching the wreckage drift through space. Leah stood beside him, her expression unreadable. It's over, he said softly. She shook her head. No, this was just one tower. The roots go deeper, other worlds, other labs. He turned to her. Then we'll burn them all. Her gaze met his fire and tenderness in equal measure. Together, he smiled, always. Outside, the remnants of xenogenesis glowed faintly against the stars, fragments of a dying empire. But within those ashes, something new was already forming, a rebellion, forged by two beings who refused to stay in cages. Human and alien. Engineer and experiment. Hope and fury. And their war was far from over. 6 months later, the universe felt quieter. The war was over, or at least the part they could see was. Xenogenesis was gone, dissolved by the Federation's Council of Ethics after a galaxy-wide tribunal. But its ruins still whispered through the black, scattered files, hidden labs, the ghosts of experiments that refused to die. For now, though, there was peace. Trevor stood on the balcony of the Federation Judicial Center, the golden city below glowing in the sunset. The air was clean here, warm. It smelled of life, not machinery. Leah joined him, her silhouette framed by the dying light. Her skin shimmered softly, no longer burning red, but pulsing like molten gold beneath glass. The change was permanent now, the physical manifestation of her evolution. You look different, he said quietly. She smiled. So do you. He laughed, shaking his head. I doubt that. Her gaze softened. You carry yourself differently. You're lighter, as if you finally forgave yourself. He looked out at the city again, eyes distant. Maybe I did. Or maybe you just reminded me that I could. A warm silence fell between them, the kind that meant understanding rather than absence. Behind them, the great doors opened. A Federation official stepped out, a tall woman in white robes, her insignia gleaming. Ms. Leah, she said, voice formal but warm. The council is ready for your statement. Leah inclined her head. Thank you. As she turned to leave, Trevor caught her wrist gently. Hey, he murmured, whatever happens in there, I'm proud of you. Her blue eyes glowed faintly. You freed me once, Trevor. Today I free myself. And she walked into the chamber. The council hall was vast, hundreds of delegates, seated beneath a vaulted dome of living glass, the stars visible above. Leah stood at the center, no restraints, no armor, only truth. Director Quan of the Council of Ethics leaned forward. You were created by Xenogenesis Laboratories under Directive X9 Delta. Do you confirm this? I do, Leia said clearly. But I was not born of Xenogenesis. I was born of their victims. My species was harvested, dissected, turned into data. I am what remains. Her voice carried through the chamber, melodic yet strong. Quinn continued, and yet despite this, you do not seek vengeance. Leah shook her head slowly. Vengeance is a cycle, and cycles are what enslaved us. I seek restoration. Screens lit up around her, displaying images, DNA sequences, genetic maps, and one word in bold Federation standard: Rebirth. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Trevor, watching from the observation deck, felt his chest tighten. He knew what this meant. Leah spoke again. These are genetic remnants recovered from Xenogenesis's archives my people preserved as code. With Federation assistance, we can bring them back. Not as weapons, as lives. A murmur of awe spread across the hall. Quain's tone softened. And you wish to lead this program? I wish to guide it, Leah said. Leadership implies control. I've seen enough of that. The room fell silent for a long moment, then the council's insignia glowed blue, signaling approval. Quan rose. Then it is decided, the Federation formally recognizes the Leia Initiative restoration of the Emberkind species. Applause erupted, echoing off the chamber walls. Trevor smiled, pride swelling in his chest. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Later that night, the two of them stood again on the balcony, but this time the stars felt closer. The Leia Initiative, Trevor said with a grin, has a nice ring to it. She chuckled. It wasn't my idea. They insisted on naming it after me. Humans do love their symbols. He shrugged. We just like to remember what matters. Leah turned toward him, her gaze searching. Do you ever regret opening that door? He met her eyes steady, unwavering. Every day I don't. It was the best mistake I ever made. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it wasn't a mistake. A soft breeze moved between them. The city lights below reflected in her skin like constellations reborn. He reached for her hand. She let him. I'm staying, he said. They offered me a place in the Federation Corps Engineering Division. I'll be helping build new life support systems for colony worlds. That suits you, she said softly, always keeping others alive. He squeezed her hand gently. And you? Her eyes turned skyward. There's a planet Ember Prime, my people's original home. The Federation's cleared it for restoration. I'll go there. He nodded, swallowing hard. You'll need someone to handle the infrastructure, the biosphere calibrations, She smiled knowingly. Are you a volunteering engineer, Hale? Depends on the benefits package. Her laughter, bright and real, broke the night air. For a while, they simply stood there, hand in hand, two souls from different worlds staring at the same sky. Weeks later, the shuttle descended through the thick amber clouds of Ember Prime. Where once the surface had been stripped bare, now green shimmered in patches, the first signs of life returning. Trevor watched from the viewport as the sun broke through, lighting the plains below in gold. It's beautiful, he said quietly. It's home, Leah whispered. The shuttle touched down. When the hatch opened, a soft wind carried the scent of new growth, fragile pure. Leah stepped out first, barefoot, her toes sinking into the warm soil. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. Trevor followed, his boots crunching softly behind her. He watched as she knelt, pressing her palm to the earth. The ground shimmered faintly under her touch, and then impossibly new shoots began to rise. Tiny glowing plants alive with her energy. Trevor's breath caught. You're seeding the planet yourself, she smiled, tears glimmering. Not just me, every sample, every echo of my kind, they're in me. When I touch the world, I remember them. He knelt beside her. Then we'll remember them together. She turned to him, eyes bright. Together, she echoed. And there, under the twin suns of Ember Prime, Trevor Hale and Leah, the human who opened a door, and the alien who walked through it, began the long, patient work of rebirth. Years later, travelers would speak of the Crimson World, a place where two suns shone on fields of fire flowers that glowed at night. They'd tell stories of a man and a woman who built it, one of blood and one of light. They'd say it was proof that compassion could rebuild what cruelty destroyed, that love against all odds could rewrite creation itself. And on quiet nights when the wind moved across the plains of Ember Prime, it carried a whisper, soft and human, but tinged with alien warmth. Open the door, human, free me. And somewhere in the stars, a voice answered, full of wonder and truth. We already are.